I'm feeling a bit rough, so bear with me. I want to talk about the two different ways to throw a punch, and what I mean throw is how you build the power of the punch before you deliver it. And I'm going to use Scott Midgley and Jimmy Sweeney as examples because they're two really, really good examples. Now, I think with Scott, I was watching him hitting the bag before. Man, there's some evil power in there. And he said he's always been a natural. I think with Scott is, if you want to measure people and find out what the best sort of shoulder width, arm length and stuff like that, then someone like Scott would be perfect to measure because he's always had very, very natural power and he's always knocked people out. I'm going to suggest that Scott hits quite a bit harder than Jimmy Sweeney, and there's a good reason for that. But Jimmy hits much more precise and with less power because he realises that he doesn't need that much power with the way he develops his punches, and it makes him quicker. So when I first started punching and how I started to develop power was the same way that Scott punches now, and man, there's not much wrong with it, but there's a big difference in the movement, and most people that box punch like Scott, even though Scott's more of a brawler, but very, very interesting. So let's think about if I'm going to throw, I'll use a hook for Scott's example, or what I call basic boxing punch, and that's where you swing, where if I had a stone and I went to throw the stone, I'd pull my hand back first and then I'd pull it forward, so I have to pull back to build power to then throw it, and that's the way Scott hits when he punches. So if I'm going to throw a hook here, then what I'm doing is to load up and hit with maximum power. I'm going to bring my hand right back here first and stretch all the muscles across here and then wing in all that power. As I land, I also exaggerate the snap in my head. So slowly I'm coming, as I move in, my hand drops right down, all the muscles become tight, and then I let it go. And that's like maximum power you could put in your punches. Now if Jimmy hit like that, he'd hit harder, but it wouldn't be as effective as he already hits, because Jimmy uses a lot more of the things and a much more refined technique. So I'm going to suggest that Jimmy doesn't need to hit with that much power because he knows exactly how much power he needs to hit with, and he chooses that with each shot. And because of the way Jimmy develops power, he doesn't need to pull his hand back. So the natural sort of Scott punch, how Scott would hit, it was if he was doing like a body shot and he went to throw, he'd load up, drop his hand, turn in, and then hit in. So he drops down, stretches, and also snapping the head in. That gives that little extra bit of power at the end, and you watch when Scott lands, he twists his head and exaggerates his head. That puts extra power. The head controls the body. Move the head first, the body follows it, and that's what he does when he lands the punch. And Scott's got really nice shock waves. That's why he's knocking people out. You know, there's one thing putting power into a shot, but if it's not got any snap at the end, then you're just going to knock somebody over. You're not going to knock them out, and he knocks people out. And you can see on the bag that man, he wouldn't want one of them body shots. So now Jimmy Sweeney, there's a man. So it just technically, I've been watching him recently and I just love the way he moves. I think you know, all the guys in the UFC need to be looking at him. A lot of the boxers need to be looking at him because he's using really, really refined technique, and it's a very rare thing. So now you think about Jimmy. If Jimmy's got his hands out and he's doing like a circular movement, if he was then going to throw a punch, he'd have to pull his hand back, or even if it was a straight shot, he'd pull his hand back, the shoulder would drop, and you'd get a roll from the shoulder and out. But Jimmy doesn't punch like that. Jimmy uses a small circular movement, which is much more refined. Now what that is, and it's a combination of shockwaves and circular movement to build the power. So now if I'm here, I'm just going to use a cross example with this. If I'm here and I was using a swing like Scott, then I'd have to bring my hand back to then fire it in, unless I was already in a position right back, because that's how I was loading up. Now what Jimmy uses, and Conor McGregor uses this, but Jimmy used it in a much more refined way, I'm telling you. So Jimmy uses a small circular movement. So if I'm here now, then rather than me coming back and coming in with a shot, all he's doing is just a little circular movement, and that activates this circular movement. Also uses the shock waves. Now if I'm hitting with this hand and I snap in, then this other hand actually activates this hand to move much faster, because this hand pulls back faster than this hand will ever drive out. So what I'm doing here is I'm just coming round in I'm making a little circle, and that loads the punch up rather than having to pull it back to then throw it in. Now I can make a circle this way, or I can make a circle this way, and then all I'm doing is just bouncing round, a little movement round and in, rather than me coming down and then firing in using more of a swing. So it allows you to punch faster, more precisely, and more in a much better. You can choose the angle and the depth much more easier, because you're using less energy and less power, so you've got more control over the punch. So that's why I'm suggesting that Scott Midgley might hit with a lot more power than Jimmy, but Jimmy knows that he doesn't have to hit with that power, because he understands that there's basically 3 levels of power that you can hit with, and that depends on what you do on the end of the punch. He knows them, and he uses them to really, really maximum effect, and that's why his punches are so much faster than a lot of other people. It's because he's using a little circular movement to develop the power rather than the swing. And like I say, both ways can develop massive, and a lot of the time the swing will develop more power than the circular movement, but it's not needed. It's just not needed. Try that.